While we continue with this discussion and getting some analysis, Professor in the Department of Political Sciences at Unisa, Professor Dirk Kotzé, joins us now. You also remember to send us your comments and questions on WhatsApp to 072-110-5584, or you can give us a call on 010-594-6010. All right, Professor, thank you so much for your time and just staying with us this evening in order to give us some analysis. Maybe let's just get your perspective with regards to the minister in answering questions today. Do you think he was as clear, concise and confident as he was when he was giving his evidence in chief?
Good evening. I think the minister was struggling today, yesterday, earlier on also in the previous 2 days, because he is presenting a version which is not necessarily in line with that of, first of all, General Nkonasi and then the National Commissioner, General Masimola, but to present actually an alternative narrative. He has to counter what they are saying in order to make a case to say that he is not what they have presented initially to the Commission. So that is not very easy to do, because I guess one feels that the public support is very much in favor of that what General Nkonasi has said. And that means that the minister is to a large extent on the defense and not so much taking the initiative in terms of the way in which he presents his evidence. I think what was also today quite evident was that the members of the committee insisted on numerous times that he was contradicting himself, or that he was not did not follow the same approach consequently right through with the different questions. Julius Malema was a good example of it, of how he said in the end he had 3 different versions of what happened with respect to Kat Matlala and the affidavit that was requested from him. So I think those are some of the complications for the minister. He must use this opportunity to build new public support for him and public trust in him. And I'm not sure if he has up to now really managed to do that.
And I think that was my next question to you, Prof. I mean, in him having to create this alternative narrative and try to build some of this confidence from the public, he sought to quite often over-clarify himself and repeat some of the issues and try to really emphasize on the things that he wanted to get out. So you don't think that he sort of found a way around bringing that confidence back to himself?
Not yet. We want maybe when he appears also at the Matlanga Commission, he will have another opportunity to do that. He might have a different approach after the experience of now. But so far, I don't think he has the upper hand in the exchange with the members of the committee. He's not taking the initiative away from them. To a large extent, they are still dictating the question, the way in which it responds, and the fact that they put him to a large extent on the back foot. They don't accept immediately his responses. They are very inquisitive in terms of testing whether what he has said and said previously earlier on, whether that is still in line with what he is presenting at this later on.
I mean,
so I think what he picks up is that he hasn't yet turned around the sentiments of the members of the committee more in favor of him.
And I suppose, Prof, he didn't quite even do himself any justice when you speak of some of those inconsistencies that you mentioned earlier on. I just want us to touch particularly on the one that you made mention of, that of EFF leader highlighting the issue of the Matlala affidavit, in him first saying that his legal team went on their own accord to acquire that affidavit, and then he came back to say that no, it was an instruction that he gave to the legal team. And then the third instance was that this was voluntarily given by Matlala and his wife. Do you think this really also just discredits the minister's testimony so far?
It does. I think, at least from the way in which I understand it, it does undermine his credibility. it might not necessarily be wrong what he said, but the way in which he presented it creates uncertainty, and it creates an impression that he's contradicting himself. And remember, he's providing this evidence, presenting this evidence under oath. So if it is in the end proven that he lied to the committee, it's actually a criminal offence. So it's not just an interview that is taking place. It's not just that he simply provides evidence for or information for the committee. This is a sort of a semi-legal process that is taking place, or judicial process. Not exactly judicial, but some elements of it are present. And therefore, all these witnesses must be exceptionally careful in what they are presenting to the committee, because they can ultimately be tested in the end, whether that was true or false, or that they were actually lying to the committee. So I think that is uppermost in his mind also. He had to be very careful not to be proven later on that they actually lied to the committee.
All right, we do have a caller, Prof. We've got Bong Musa in Tsakani on the line. Bong Musa, a very good evening to you. What are your thoughts tonight?
Very.
Yes, speak to us. Hi, Bong Musa, you are on Newsroom 405. What's your question or comment this evening?
So my comment is that the minister is very intelligent, very crafty, but it doesn't mean that he didn't do what General Mchunu alleges he has done. The minister has a tendency of explaining things that were not asked to him whenever he is asked a specific question. And at times, he tends to not want to answer specific questions in which he cannot justify his actions. Because all I'm getting from having watched this the whole day is that the minister is justifying his actions, but then the evidence, it doesn't take away the evidence that is directly linked to these individuals that are doing shady business in the site.
All right, Bong Musa, thank you so much for your observation and for sharing it with us. I mean, Prof, he speaks of what we touched on earlier, that there seemingly is a notion of him having to over-explain, a tendency to explain issues around the questions. Do you find similarities in how he's answering these questions to how General Sibiya was also answering his questions?
Yes, I think that's an interesting comparison. We was also using a similar approach, and I think this is the reason for this is what I've just said now, is that they clearly are very careful that what they are saying cannot come back to them, and that it is proven that they have misled the committee, or that they haven't really presented them with what they regard as the truth. So they are positioning themselves in terms of their responses in a very careful way. Unfortunately, it creates for, I think, the members of the committee, most possibly, and for the public in general, the impression that they are not forthright, that they are not presenting and answering in a very direct way, but want to qualify what they are saying and to come from a different direction in order to present a response to the committee, which are very often not really a direct response to the questions. So I think it is if one asks the individual members of the committee tonight, what have they learned in terms of information through these sessions now, they possibly will have very different responses of what exactly they could have established through this question and answer sessions. And I think this is part of the... Yes?
Just what impact would that then have, Prof, in this information coming out in different ways, in how then the parliamentary ad hoc committee would come to a decision, a conclusion, or even recommendations at the end of this process?
Well, I think it is, in a sense, a lost opportunity for someone like the Minister Mchunu, and also earlier on General Sibiya, because in a sense, they have to turn around the evidence that General Mchunu has given right in the beginning, in the 6th of July, and also in his own presentation to this committee. They must provide an alternative narrative. And if they can't do that, then the fallback position is that of General Mkhunu. So I think for them, it is exceptionally important that they, first of all, can convince the members that there is a different narrative, there is a different explanation, there is a different version of what the evidence is and how that can be interpreted, and that General Mkhunu's presentation was therefore not the dominant one. And so far, I think they haven't yet succeeded in turning around the perceptions and the understandings of the members of the committee.
Prof, the issue of the existence of the interministerial committee was quite a contentious one, with the minister saying that it did not exist in the 7th administration, but there's no record of its closeout report, even though it did exist in the other 2 administrations before it. What does this highlight, if any, about some of the elements or issues that may fall through the cracks in the workings of government? That this IMC was in existence, but it seems, as EFF leader has said, it seems to disappear or fizzle out, and therefore the minister not even referring back to it in his decision to disband the PKTT.
Yes, I think the issue is about continuity, whether the Interministerial Committee of the 6th administration continued into the 7th administration. Remember, we have now a very different form of government. It's a coalition, 10 parties are part of it, different types of ministers from different parties. So therefore, there is not an automatic assumption that the institutions of government or the cabinet automatically continues after an election. And I think this is where the issue is now, because if there's an interministerial committee in existence, then it means that the minister, the leading minister, in this case, the Minister of Police, must consult with the other ministers. That's the very purpose of an interministerial committee, is that the minister of the portfolio is not solely responsible for the decision-making processes and leading of whatever structure is attached to it. And that would have meant that the minister must have consulted with the interministerial committee before he decided to dissolve the task team, the political killings task team. And that obviously didn't happen. So I think that is where what the real issue is about, is to what extent this was in the end a decision solely by the Minister of Police and those people that's being argued that influenced him into taking that decision, or whether other members of the cabinet that are part of the security cluster in general were actually aware of it.
That issue of continuity is a very important one, especially when we want to measure impact. We've got Selwyn in Jeffreys Bay. Selwyn, a very good evening to you. What are your thoughts tonight?
Yes, I just feel that the minister, apart from contradicting himself, is repeating himself quite a bit, especially with Professor Wessels. And every time he gets a question, he would answer it. As soon as it's a question that he can't answer, then he says, just repeat the question, or, what was the question? And it just doesn't sound right. Sorry, I don't think he's speaking the truth. That's my feeling and my prediction.
All right, Selwyn, thank you so much for giving us your thoughts tonight. We also have from Howick, we have Sbusiso. Sbusiso, good evening. What's your question or comment about tonight's topic?
Good evening, everyone. Now, my comment will be like, I don't think the Mr. Senzo Mchunu is speaking the truth, because by the way I'm looking at the things, and he is trying to give us long answers instead of just being short and straight to the point. And secondly, what I think is that he's trying to defend himself, or he's trying to justify himself with those matters, So that's my take.
All right, Busisa, thank you for calling us tonight. Your take being that the minister is long-winded and quite defensive, and you don't think he is speaking the truth. I mean, Prof, we are hearing quite common answers there from many of our viewers in that the minister seems to be repeating himself and they don't quite believe him. He was answering questions to the FF Plus MP, Mr. Wessels, and Mr. Wessels was asking him that if in hindsight he thought that possibly there could have been people that were using him to disband the PKTT in order to protect some of those criminal underworld workings and those syndicates. Do you think the minister understood what he was answering when he answered that particular question, or do you think it was one of those issues where he was deflecting in order for him not to answer the question as it was put out to him?
Yeah, I think the question was very direct. It's very difficult not to understand that question, and that question obviously has a long history, and it started with General Nkonasi. That was one of the key points that he made on the 6th of July, and then also in his evidence at the Matlanga Commission as well as the Parliamentary Committee, is that the motive for the disbanding of the task team, according to him, was exactly that, that it is in order to protect persons like Kat Matlala and other Kotzé and others. And if that is indeed even not the complete truth, but part of the truth, the minister obviously will want to keep as far away as possible of that, because the moment that connection is made, then he's implicated. Then there's no defense left for him in order to say, but that was a decision on my own. That was in the interest of the police. That was his argument about the budget and whether it is in line or in conflict with the Public Financial Management Act, the PFMA. All those arguments will then disappear. So I think that is why he created an alternative, as I call it, narrative, in order to create a new argument to explain why he took that decision. But that is why it sounds so elongated, so as a composite type of argument, which is for most people simply not convincing.
Were you convinced when he spoke about the explanations he gave on the reasons why he was disbanding the PKTT and why he issued out the letter on the 31st of December? I mean, he said he pondered on the matter for a number of days. He was thinking about it, and even at the Lusikisiki funeral where he was with the National Commissioner, he didn't mention it because even at that point, he had not come to a decision. But what he wanted, though, was for it to be registered on the 31st of December, even though he knew that people would only come back from their festivities much later on in that week or in the first or second week of January. Do you think he gave quite a plausible explanation as to why that letter was sent out on the 31st of December, as he was asked on a number of times to say, but this is quite an unusual time to put out such a letter of such importance?
Yeah, I think this is one of the main questions that will have to be answered by both processes, the Commission as well as the Parliamentary Committee. Whether that was a planned timing, and knowing that the National Commissioner was then already on leave, and therefore that he won't be able to attend to it immediately, as well as the fact that it's in terms of the way in which the different, well, it was in any case a time where most people would take leave. So to take a decision like that is unusual, and it is therefore also not something which can be properly considered or discussed by all of those who are affected by such a decision. So it creates, again, a sense of suspicion. If it was at the time when most people were back at work, and they could have been part of the process of this decision-making and then the implementation, it just would have been more convincing than at such a time. So I think this is part of his problem, is to convince the public, the Commission and Parliament that there's nothing unusual about it. But I don't think he has yet reached that point. being able to convince them about that.
All right, let's see if he has convinced the public. We do have a few WhatsApp messages. One from Luke says the minister is not consistent with his answers and he shows arrogance, the I don't care kind of attitude. He's trying too hard to shift the blame to the National Commissioner. He must take the responsibility that he messed up the police ministry. All right, Poppy says Minister Mchunu is not being honest on the reasons for disbanding the PKTT. Today, he was not on his high horse of having the powers of this and that as a police minister. He forgot that voters placed him in that position in which he thinks he can go to his rural home and make decisions that affect other people. Shame on him. He has been lying. Knox says the minister is wishy-washy. He is going around in circles trying by all means to cover his tracks, but he is caught with his pants down, no place to hide. And Temba Tukuva says, good evening, everyone. I'm so impressed by the way the parliamentarians are asking the questions to Mchunu. I'm only irritated by Kutato from the ANC. She keeps on trying to protect Mchunu. And V says the minister is a qualified politician. He doesn't answer directly, but through his declining energy that he feels, it's clear that people see him for who he is. Right, and that was the last one. Just to get your parting shots there, Prof. I mean, someone mentioned the quality of the questions being asked by MPs. Initially, when it was the questioning of General Sibiya, many parties were also coming out, civil society organizations rather, saying that the MPs don't seem to be fit and up for the job. What's your take in terms of how MPs have been asking questions to the minister today?
Well, I think as they go along, they're obviously becoming much better informed about the information that's relevant about the events as they unfolded, as well as the responses, and they have now much more information available in order to pose questions. I think where the first few interviews or presentations of the witnesses were possibly the most difficult for them. As they go along, I think it's going to improve even more. But I think what is impressive for me personally is that they don't become necessarily emotional. They don't become involved in sort of party politics. What is also, I think, important is that the different parties, political or representatives of the parties there don't take up party political positions overall in general. In the way in which they are approaching this, compared to, for example, the impeachment process of the former public protector, it was much more, there were much more party political elements involved in it. So I think they are learning also in the process of how to deal with these type of events or processes much better over time.
All right, Prof, thank you so much for your time. It certainly has been enlightening. We certainly appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us. That was Professor Dirk Kotzé, who is the professor in the Department of Political Sciences at Unisa.